Okay, for our second topic tonight, it's Mr. Kingsley Mack. What you got on your mind tonight, Kingsley?
Yeah. Spoiler, like we said earlier, there's going to be a fair amount of talk tonight about the amazing game Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And in sake of time, and I didn't probably have too much to talk about anyways, I kind of wanted to give like more of a review of it, even though I have in the past, but I'll shorten that a little bit. But then I have some interesting discussion points on how this game is a very, very relevant discussion point these days on how a good game can be made for less money and lower cost for selling too, and what that right mix is maybe for games going forward in the future. Now, I've said this for a few weeks, and a lot of people have said this. This game is freaking amazing. It's had like the highest score of any game ever on Metacritic for user reviews. I think it was like 9.7, and then like the next highest game was 9.3. It's like something is showing you there, even if you haven't tried this game. This is an amazing game. I went into it very skeptically because I did a little bit of Final Fantasy back in the day, JRPG turn-based thing. I'm like, that's not really for me. However, I went into this game, and there's reasons why it got me hooked, but I got hooked within like 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, this will work for me. Now, a lot of it has to do with I was a little more bored with the original graphics of those older Final Fantasy games. So for me, graphics and interaction is much more important. And so now in this game, even though it's turn-based, it still feels very live and action-packed. You can do live shooting, live dodging and parrying. And yes, you do your turns on your different abilities and cards. So I think it's kind of helped that we're in a point today where this game is a lot more interactive, which got me hooked. Of course, the music's good. We'll talk more about that later. Everything about the game is so cool. It is I think people lean into this too much. Yes, it's by a French studio, but they say it's a Frenchy version of a JRPG. I mean, this game is way more Americanized. I think even though it's French, it looks closer to what it's more like if you're not into like different cultures or whatever, but like I think it's just more easy to get into, even if you're not into like that Japanese anime style or whatever. So even though they say it's French, that doesn't really mean anything to me other than the accents that sometimes come through or just some of the characters or where it takes place in the game, kind of.
Or fighting the mimes.
The mimes is probably the biggest part. That's hilarious.
I'm in.
Dude, my wife walked in when I was fighting a mime yesterday. And she's like, "Oh, I don't like the look of that character."
They're kind of freaky looking.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
With their crazy smile, and they make the wall.
Yeah, and they're the fact that their weapons are invisible, like Predator invisible, so like you can see them, but they're clear, see through, is amazing, right? Because it's a mime, so its weapons should not be real and tangible, and
yeah, that's true.
It's great. It's great.
Mime magical powers, but
yeah.
I can't believe like how much I got into the game, and I still generally prefer just a action adventure open world type game like Assassin's Creed or something. But this game has a very special place in my heart. I went through it very quickly and highly, 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 highly recommend it. Everyone needs to try it out. $50, or you can get it on Game Pass. So that kind of shows us too that it's very easy to get into it. You can buy like a month of Game Pass on PC, or is it on Xbox Game Pass also? Or do you know, guys? Or
yeah,
I'm pretty sure it is.
And I did exactly what you said. I was gonna buy the game, and Fudd was like, "Just get Game Pass," and I was like, "Oh, PC Game Pass is $11 a month, like no brainer." My kids can just go download all the games they want,
Right.
Yeah, there have been some really good games on. I don't have an Xbox, but I have the PC Game Pass, and well worth it because there's been some great games lately. And so this game, as of its latest numbers, has sold 3.3 million copies. Now, we don't know if that's all the $50 versions, but even Game Pass copies, they do get a cut. They do get some money, of course, from Microsoft. I don't know if it's probably not $50, of course, per seat, but 3.3 million copies. So I was doing the math, and I know again that may be including the Game Pass versions too. But assuming it wasn't, 3.3 million times $50, they made $165 million so far.
You know what the budget was to make it?
Well, I'm going to get to that too, actually.
Sorry. Ahead of myself.
No worries. Yeah. That's kind of my topic, is like, this is like a wild card out of nowhere, because there's been a lot of discussion lately about game prices and this and that and studio sizes. And this just comes out of nowhere and blows everyone away. As far as how much to make it, there's no one really knows, but there is a newer article that came out recently where the publisher says fans would never guess the RPG's budget. And now they are still keeping it a secret. However, he said it's less than some games like, I don't even really know these games as much, but it's less than games like Mirror's Edge and Vanquish. Those games cost more. And someone did an estimate of how much. Yeah, what were you going to say?
I said Mirror's Edge was such a good game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
enjoyed both of those games too.
And official budgets for those haven't been released either, but a research group ballparked that the cost of making one of those games maybe costs like 18 million to maybe 25 million. So they're saying it was less than that. So let's just say 5 to 15 million, probably more. Like,
it's not bad at all.
I really doubt it's as low as 5 million, but
it's a winner.
Maybe.
It's a big win.
Yeah, and they've already made 165 million.
And I don't remember this game ever getting any kind of marketing. It just appeared, right?
Well, it's an indie developer, right?
That's right.
Like,
yeah.
So yes,
there is no marketing.
That's true.
Yes,
no marketing budgets.
So on that point, this studio only has about 33 full-time people that worked on the game. Now, to be fair, there's about 100 or so other people. There's always, like, if you look at the credits, there's contractors. There's like the composer people. I don't know if they were counted as a full-time person or not, but in the actual game studio, 33 people were working on this game with about 100 other contractors doing things for the game.
Right.
It did take a while to make the game, so that's one thing about it. But it shows that this game was priced perfectly. They were able to get into Game Pass, which again is pretty amazing that they were able to do this. I guess I should have looked up, how did Microsoft allow that? I mean, they must have seen the game and saw how good it was, but like, they do have indie games in the store, of course.
They do a lot. Like, there's a pretty fair amount. When we were, it was fun that Fluffy and I just talked with Cliff yesterday, because he's sort of our go-to person for playing games on Game Pass and telling us when games are good or not. And he's got a fair number of indie games that come through every time we talk to him. There's like, you should be trying this out. So I think Game Pass does a pretty good job of finding pretty interesting indie games to put on there as well.
Yeah. So the discussion point I'll get to, I'm closing up here, is how can other games move to this way? Because there's a lot of talk about like AAA games and large studios getting bloated, and then sometimes making games that people don't like as much, so they think it's not worth the price. There's a lot of people, the developer here of Sandfall, but also a Sony previous boss, which I'll get to in a second, were saying similar things, that there's a lot of irresponsible practices in the industry these days. Some games can make it work. They think like Grand Theft Auto 6 is one that's going to make it work. But there's a lot of other AAA games and things that have come out recently where it's either people feel like it cost too much for what the game was, or just it wasn't totally worth it. This former PlayStation boss says that gaming price hikes are inevitable, but lack of value is the real issue. So I know there's a lot of discussion too of like, are $80 games too much? I mean, I think that's missing the point. We had $80 games even in the 90s, right? And a game these days would be more like 160 with inflation costs. So it's not so much that games should never be $80, $100. It's just how much value are you getting from that game? And there's more and more games that are coming out at these higher costs where people are feeling like it's not worth the value. So I don't know necessarily that we need to have a discussion that $80 and $100 is never a price that games should be reaching these days. But I do think there's a market for a lot of these $50, $40 games and smaller studios to do things well. I think this is really going to be a wake-up call for the larger studios, unfortunately, where I don't want to see more people fired. The thing that sucks is like when people overhire, and a lot of that was going on during COVID, and then people get fired. Like, man, they should have never hired those people in the first place. But also just, come up with a plan to make a good game take longer, kind of like back on our previous discussion. Don't have the deadlines, push them again if you need, and then do that. I mean, it's easy for people to say like, yeah, let's just have smaller studios, $50 games. But then again, this game did take 10 years-ish to make, and we can't have that with live service games. So I do still think large studios need to be out there for live service games. But it's an interesting point. So what do y'all think?
On the Clair Obscura thing that you were talking about, you were saying like it is turn-based, but it feels live action. One thing too about it being turn-based is like you can play the game in so many ways where you insert yourself in to attack more, or jump in front of a boss and attack more, or play twice.
Live shooting.
Yeah. So like I just wanted to highlight that like, it really is, even though it's turn-based, like there's a lot of builds and stuff you can do to really manipulate that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let someone else go on price per game.
You guys could talk about whatever, but I am curious on, do we think how we think game prices should be, studio sizes, and how long games need to take to come out? And do you hope we can get more games like this? Of course, Todd hasn't tried it, but as you can see, it's sold very well, 3.3 million copies.
I was just playing some footage of it on stream so people can get a look at what we're talking about here. I'm sure a lot of people out there have played it. Amazing Taco King did say it was on Xbox Showcase twice. It's a huge success because it's an indie development with Microsoft funding backing it. So, okay, good point. And he also said too many investment promises that need to be paid back is the main issue. It makes studios play it safe instead of risking new. Dude, the movie theater's been doing this. The movie studio's been doing this forever. They're afraid to make a new style of movie. It's all about the sequels, right? So, and Jimmy Kent said, if game prices go up, I want to see less microtransactions. They said those were put in place to offset price increases. So,
yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'm probably not the person to ask about $80 games because I'm the person that can afford the video game, the expensive video games. But if there's a service like Game Pass that's supporting a subscription model, I think as long as the payout, and like my son said, Cam Gentleman said, might be looking up what the payout structure is for Game Pass. I don't think you're going to find that anywhere. I think that's internal. I don't think Microsoft is going to tell your Game Pass members how much they're paying.
Probably different too.
Yeah, exactly. But, so I didn't have a lot to say on this because I haven't played it a lot, but I'm just listening. I'm curious what you guys have to say.
Yeah. I know I had a couple different points there, so no worries if I was too across the board, but I think definitely it was a good price that they did for it, and I'm impressed with what they were able to do with that small of a studio.
That's amazing.
I don't think we should be getting rid of all large studios, but I think people are really realizing here and admitting that, and the studios are admitting, that's what I'm saying, like, because the former PlayStation boss said this and the Sandfall publisher said this, which makes the Clair Obscur that AAA studios are going to, the reckoning has been coming, especially with this game and everything, and they're going to see what can be done to make games more worth it. And I'm also a little bit worried if live service games are going to be going away more and more. And the whole, of course, Destiny thing is something that I always wish they could have more content.
Sure.
Destiny, I feel like the main reason why, my main qualm is they just don't have content. And like, how are you going to get more unless you have like a huge studio when you're talking live service? But
you've got to be cranking out. I mean, you have to have an army of people creating stuff all the time. Not to mention Bungie's studio, they're using old engines and stuff that they've been using forever. They're not trying any kind of new engines. I don't even know if they're using AI to even do any kind of coding or anything now. But, they have less studio to work with now, and I just don't know if they can keep up, because we as Destiny players, we're voracious. We gobble up anything they put out within weeks.
But it's not even just that. They don't. If you look at like games like Assassin's Creed or like Clair Obscur, there is more content to do there than even Final Shape's content. People forget that only play Destiny. Now, of course, when those games are done, they're done. But also in Destiny, I'm kind of done too when the PvE content's done. I don't like doing the homework things in Destiny. Yeah. So I always just need more content in Destiny also. But yeah.
Yeah. Nips, you have anything to say on that?
That's okay if no other comments, but I love the game. It's amazing.
Yeah. You're muted. You're muted, Nips.
Oh, I was saying. I think Nips was gonna say something. That was really funny. You want me to go first?
Okay.
Well, you had raised your hand to go for it, and then you had your mic.
He was doing finger guns at me. So
I was like, go, because you were like, go, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll save my spot.
I wrote down what I was gonna say, so I didn't forget it.
That's what I do.
Okay. So you said on the topic of if games get too expensive, are we okay with game prices going up? And I think that there's two aspects that are going to impact that. And I think one is if games start becoming like $100-$120, I think people are just going to do Game Pass. Because why would I spend $120 on a game when I can spend $11.99 a month? And there's probably a game on there that all my friends can also play because they also have Game Pass.
Right.
As well, like if AAAs decide to start selling games at $80, $90, $100, and I'm saying base games, not collector's editions, because then you're getting something else along with the price tag, right? But base games start at $100 or $80 or whatever. Those are just the AAA games. Like there's other games on Steam or Epic or whatever your launcher is on PC that will still be cheaper. Like there'll still be indie games that are less expensive. But then at the same time, games like GTA, games like Call of Duty are going to fetch whatever price tag they put on it. So I think some games, because of loyalty, again, as long as the product is a good experience and people enjoy the game and you're putting out good content, they're going to jump on those Call of Duties and stuff. But new titles may struggle more at a higher price when people are like, well, why would I buy Marathon when, assuming like Marathon and Rivals came out at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. Why would I pay for Marathon when all my friends can play Rivals for free with me?
Yeah.
So,
go ahead, Nips.
I don't know. I think. Go ahead.
And on that, real quick, I was going to mention this, so thanks for reminding me. I kind of feel like free to play games have caused problems in the industry. I know it's good to have, but they've gotten people to expect game prices to be lower and lower. And I want to be fair here. Yes, a lot of games have gotten too expensive for what they bring out, but at the same time, it's kind of unfair for people to think games need to be like less than 50, 40 if they don't want to have a free-to-play model with microtransactions and everything like that. So, because again, there were games that came out in the 90s that were even $80. So the pricing thing is interesting. I am very nuanced about it. Like, it just really depends on how good the game is. I don't think we should be expecting that everything's free with microtransactions. So that's why I like Game Pass as another option versus free-to-play games only coming out. And I don't mind paying $50 to $100 too if the game's worth it.
Anything else, guys?
Yeah. When it comes to game pricing, for me, we can have all the different flavors of the rainbow. It comes down to if you're a AAA game and you put this, you're cutting edge and you're creating something that's going to give people $100 worth of value, that's great. I think the nice part about like Clair Obscur is for a $50 game or Game Pass game, if you want to go that way, but I spent the $50 on it. you definitely get your money's worth if you can play a game like that. But again, on the same time, you have to know yourself as well. I think a lot of that is sort of a personal thing, right? I know if I have a JRPG in front of me, I'm going to get my money's worth. I will grind through every last thing I can grind through and get there. If you're not sure about it, then it's a little bit tougher to justify spending $50 and then play for 2 minutes and be like, yeah, this game is not for me. And that's where I think free-to-play games are great for folks who are, don't know themselves that way. So it's one of those ones that, you got to just sort of know yourself in addition to, and obviously that's not how companies work, right? But what are you going to do? Put out your games for the price. If it's good and there's a market for it, you'll get paid off. If not, you might be a little Ubisoft Montreal situation.
Yeah.
Well, I'm basically done with my topic, unless you had anything else to add there, Todd.
No, I don't really have much to add on this one because I have limited knowledge and I'd rather not, sound ignorant saying things I don't know. I
was going to say,
yeah,
I had more to talk about in terms of AAA, AA type games because I feel like not just game pricing, but I feel like there's a lot of really good AA or even less than AA games out there that come out that you can have fun with. Yeah. I still look back fondly to Greedfall, which is a game that didn't get a lot of play when it came out in 2019. But it did well enough for them to, Greedfall 2 is coming in the near future. And it had sort of the same feelings as a lot of AAA games. It's just the world was a little bit less empty, or a little bit more empty, right? Mm-hmm. The streets didn't have as many people on them. There were fewer, just random people standing around. Sort of that cyberpunk at launch feel where every third person was the same character model. But I feel like there's a spot for all of these different games. And sometimes I feel like people who play games are a little bit on the side of, this has to be exactly in this wheelhouse, and if it's not there, I'm not going to like it. Which is, again, totally your prerogative. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But there's way too many people who are like, I don't like it, and therefore it sucks. And that part always gets me a little bit, because it's like, not everybody likes the same thing.
Yeah.
Some people love Boba Fett. Other people like Fluffy are like, oh my God, they busted out the Vespas. I'm out of here.
That was pretty bad. I admit that was pretty bad. They did not. I don't know who put that in there, but that did not fit the theme of that show. My Lord, that was bad. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's the thing I love about the game is it's just very. They did what they wanted to do, and they did it really well. And for that, they should be rewarded.
Even buy the game to support them. This would be one of the first times I've done that. That's how awesome I think they are. For the music alone, if somehow that can give a little bit more money to the composer and the musicians, holy fuck. But I did it on Game Pass, but I might just buy the game too.
I didn't know there was only 33 people making this game. It's a gorgeous game. My Lord. It's a fantastic looking game.
That was the fun part when you were talking about budget. I'm wondering how much of their actual budget for that game is just spent on voice actors, because they got an all-star cast to do the voices.
Very nice.
Starting at the top with Andy Serkis being the voice of Renoir.
He was in it.
Nice. It's crazy.